All right, here we go. WNBA's officials exposed blatantly cheating for Asia Wilson. I mean, this is blatant cheating. Breanna Stewart pissed off about it after the game, and she was
There's a strange detail buried in what happened in Portland on Friday night. Something almost nobody noticed in real time. Not even the woman running the show from the sideline. Stephanie White didn't realize Caitlin Clark had just put up a triple-double until the team was already back in the locker room. Think about that for a second. One of the most complete performances of the season, happening right in front of the head coach, and it slipped past her until the numbers were already locked in. That's how fast, how chaotic, and how good this Indiana Fever team has become. And by the time White figured out what she'd just watched, she had plenty to say about it. The final score tells part of the story. Indiana beat Portland 112-98 on the road at the Moda Center. And that win wasn't just another mark in the standings. It was the 5th straight game the Fever had cracked the 100-point mark. And their 13th 100-point game of the entire season. A new NBA record that no team had ever touched before this year. 5 games in a row, over 100 points, on the road and at home, against different defenses trying different looks. That kind of consistency doesn't happen by accident, and it's part of why this particular win felt bigger than a single box score. At the center of it was Clark, who finished with 26 points, 10 rebounds and 10 assists in 34 minutes, shooting 5 for 9 from the field and going a near-perfect 14 for 17 at the free throw line. That's her 4th career triple-double, and it puts her in genuinely rare company. Only Alyssa Thomas and Jessica Shepard have recorded more in league history, and Clark is now tied with Sabrina Ionescu for 3rd most triple-doubles ever, guard or otherwise. She also became the fastest player in NBA history to hit 1,500 career points and 650 assists, a combination of scoring and playmaking that very few players ever reach, let alone in just 78 career games. And this was happening less than a month after she returned from a back injury that had kept her off the court entirely for a stretch of the season. To really appreciate how remarkable this 4th triple-double is, it helps to look back at the first 3, because each one marked its own piece of history. The first came in her rookie season, on July 6, 2024, against the league-leading New York Liberty. Clark finished that game with 19 points, 12 rebounds and 13 assists, becoming the first rookie in NBA history to ever record a triple-double, and the first player in Indiana Fever franchise history to do it. She hit the milestone with a rebound early in the 4th quarter, and the Fever pulled off a comeback win over the top team in the league that same afternoon. Less than 2 months later, on September 4th, she did it again, putting up 24 points, 10 rebounds and 10 assists in a win over the Los Angeles Sparks, becoming the only rookie ever to record 2 triple-doubles in a single season. Then came the 3rd one, and this is where things start to feel less like a fluke and more like a pattern. On May 17, 2025, in her very first game of her sophomore season, Clark recorded a triple-double against the Chicago Sky, finishing with 20 points, 10 rebounds and 10 assists, along with 4 blocks, a career high, and 2 steals. That performance tied her with Candace Parker for 3rd most triple-doubles in league history at the time, and it took her just 41 career games to get there, a pace almost nobody else in WNBA history has matched. Even then, Clark downplayed the individual numbers, saying afterward that her coaching staff had been pushing her to become a better defender in every practice, and that she still felt she had plenty of room left to improve. That mindset, praise mixed with an insistence on getting better, is a thread that runs through her entire young career, and it's exactly the same thread that showed up in what Stephanie White said after Portland. Now, with this 4th one, that pattern has repeated itself in almost the exact same way. It happened late, with 33 seconds left in the game, when Clark dished out her 10th assist on a layup by Michaela Timpson. sealing the numbers in dramatic, last-minute fashion, rather than in some blowout that had already been decided. It's worth remembering, too, that this was Clark's first triple-double of this particular season, since an injury had shortened her 2025 campaign and limited her chances to add to the tally. Coming back from that kind of setback and immediately producing one of the signature performances of her career says something about where her game is right now. The way the actual game opened set the tone for everything that followed. With less than 5 seconds left in the first quarter, Clark sprinted the length of the floor and rose up for a three-pointer through contact. It had the look of a desperate heave, the kind of shot that usually clangs off the rim as the buzzer sounds. Instead, it went in clean, and Indiana closed the quarter with a 2-point lead they never really gave back. It was the first sign that this wasn't going to be a normal night. From there, Indiana kept building, opening the third quarter on a hot shooting stretch that pushed their lead as high as 18 points, with Clark doing damage from every level of the floor, her signature drive to the left and deep step-back three both showing up at key moments. But the game wasn't decided by highlight plays alone. With about 3 minutes left, Portland had clawed its way back within 7 points, riding a 16-4 run that had the Moda Center crowd fully alive. Then Kelsey Mitchell was whistled for an offensive foul, a call that would have handed the Fire the ball and the momentum right when they needed it most. White immediately called for a coach's challenge. It was a gamble in a tight moment, the kind of decision that can define a coach's night just as much as any player's stat line. The review overturned the call, ruling that Mitchell had actually been fouled first on the play. Mitchell made both free throws. Indiana settled back down, and Portland's rally lost its air almost as quickly as it had built up. It's easy to remember the triple-double and forget the 2 minutes where a single review kept the game from slipping away entirely. Mitchell, for what it's worth, matched Clark's 26 points on the night, and her performance extended a streak of her own, a 13th straight game scoring 20 points or more, tying her with Diana Taurasi for the second longest such streak in league history. Monique Billings chipped in 15 more off the bench, and the Fever's balance across the roster was as much a part of the win as any individual number. This wasn't a team leaning on one player to carry the whole night. It was a deep group, clicking at the same time, with Clark's fingerprints on almost every possession that mattered. So when White finally got to speak about the performance afterward, what stood out wasn't just admiration, it was a coach genuinely caught off guard by her own player. She admitted she hadn't even clocked the triple-double until everyone was already off the floor, saying it was an especially impressive effort from Clark that night. She pointed out that Clark can affect a game in every way imaginable, scoring at will, while also setting up teammates all over the floor. But then White did something coaches don't always do in the glow of a big win. She pointed to the one area she still wants to see grow, saying the next step for Clark is continuing to improve as a defensive rebounder. Praise and a pointed note for improvement, delivered in the same breath. That combination says a lot about how White coaches, and it echoes almost exactly what Clark herself said a year earlier, when she talked about her own coaching staff pushing her toward better defense even after a big night. It's not the first time White has talked about Clark this way, blending genuine respect with an unwillingness to let her get comfortable. Earlier in their relationship, White had spoken about needing to earn Clark's trust as a coach, describing herself as sharing the same relentless, almost obsessive competitiveness that drives Clark on the floor. She's talked about wanting Clark to keep playing with the same fire and intensity that makes her who she is, while also reminding her to keep her emotions in check during games so they don't throw off the team's rhythm. It's the kind of relationship that isn't built overnight, coach and star player figuring out how honest they can be with each other, and it's clearly starting to pay off on nights like this one. There's also a broader arc here that goes beyond a single box score. White has been open about wanting Clark to keep building physical strength, to hold up against the punishment that comes with being the most watched player in the league. Night after night, defense after defense, throwing something new at her. She's talked about the importance of a lower center of gravity, about time under tension, about the physical toll of carrying that kind of attention on the floor. A performance like the one in Portland, coming off a back injury, is as much a signal of resilience as it is of raw talent. Zoom out, and the timing of this win matters too. The victory pushed Indiana's record to 19-10, the best mark in the Eastern Conference and fourth best in the entire WNBA, continuing a 5-game winning streak that has the Fever rolling into the final stretch of the regular season. Their next stop is Minnesota, closing out this road trip against a Lynx team that's been one of the league's stronger opponents. Every one of those 100-point performances adds weight to the argument that this team is peaking at exactly the right moment, heading into the stretch of the season where playoff positioning starts to solidify. What makes this stretch so compelling is how ordinary it's starting to look for Clark to do something historic. A triple-double used to be a career milestone, teams circled and celebrated for weeks. For Clark, it's becoming close to a routine occurrence, one more entry in a stat sheet that keeps rewriting what's considered normal for a guard in her third season. And the fact that her own coach didn't even realize it was happening in real time says something about how seamlessly these performances are folding into her game, rather than standing out as isolated fireworks. It's also worth remembering just how far this all traces back to a Fever team that had gone nearly a decade without making the playoffs before Clark's rookie season, and has now become one of the most talked about, most statistically dominant teams in the league in the span of just a few years. Look closer at the first quarter, and you can see just how many hands touched this win before Clark ever got to her big numbers. Aaliyah Boston scored all of Indiana's first points, except for a three-pointer from Lexi Hull, which Boston herself assisted, setting an early tone of ball movement and unselfish play that carried through the rest of the night. After 10 minutes, Clark led all scorers with 9 points, with Portland's Emily Engstler right behind her with 8. The Fire briefly grabbed momentum late in the first when Carla Light found Engstler for a jumper with just over 4 seconds left, putting Portland up by a point, only for Clark to answer immediately with that buzzer-beating 3 to flip the lead back to Indiana. It was that kind of game all night. A punch followed almost instantly by a counterpunch, until Indiana's counterpunches started landing harder and more often than Portland's. The middle of the game had its own swings. Portland actually outscored Indiana in the second quarter, keeping things tied with about 5 minutes left before halftime. And Clark's stat line at that stage of the game, 22 points on efficient shooting, along with 9 rebounds and 6 assists, already hinted at the kind of night she was building toward without anyone quite realizing it yet. Indiana didn't truly pull away until the third quarter, when they opened the frame red-hot from the field and stretched what had been a close game into an 18-point cushion, forcing Portland into an early timeout just to stop the bleeding. That third-quarter surge is really where the game was decided, even if the sealed triple-double and the late defensive stand are what people remember most vividly afterward. Indiana also had to survive some early adversity of its own. Lexi Hull, one of the team's most reliable perimeter defenders, picked up her third foul just 6 minutes into the game, forcing her to the bench far earlier than the coaching staff would have liked. She ended up playing only 13 minutes all night, a reminder that even in a dominant win, things don't always go according to plan. Depth mattered here too, with Indiana able to absorb that kind of disruption without it derailing the game plan, largely because of how deep this current Fever roster actually is. That depth is worth dwelling on for a moment, because it says a lot about how this team was built around Clark, rather than just stacked next to her. Alongside Clark, Mitchell, and Boston, the current roster includes veterans like DeWanna Bonner, Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, and Brianna Turner, plus younger players like Jaylen Brown, Michaela Timpson, Bree Hall, and Yvonne Ajim, rounding things out. That's a mix of proven scorers, versatile defenders, and young talent still finding its footing, all playing under a head coach who has made it clear she expects everyone, including her franchise player, to keep improving, rather than settle into comfort just because the wins are piling up. And Stephanie White herself brings a track record into this seat that shapes how she approaches all of it. Before taking over in Indiana, she had spent recent seasons coaching the Connecticut Sun, building a reputation as someone who could get contending basketball out of a roster through discipline, structure, and direct communication with her players. That background helps explain why her comments about Clark always seem to carry two layers at once: genuine appreciation for what Clark can do, paired with a pointed, specific note about what still needs work. It's not a formula she reserves for Clark alone. It's simply how White coaches, and it happens to be landing extremely well, with a player who has said herself that she shares that same relentless competitive mindset. All of this sits on top of a larger organizational turnaround that shouldn't get lost in the shuffle of a single highlight-filled box score. Before Clark arrived as the top overall pick, the Fever had gone nearly a decade without qualifying for the playoffs, one of the longest active droughts in the league at the time. Her rookie season ended that drought, and every milestone since, the triple-doubles, the assist records, the scoring pace, the growing win totals under White, has built on that foundation rather than existing in isolation. A win over Portland in late July might not carry the same headline weight as a signature playoff moment, but it's part of the same continuous story, one where a franchise that used to be an afterthought is now producing WNBA records on a near-weekly basis. It's also a useful reminder of how much has changed in the tone around Clark specifically. In her rookie year, every triple-double came with an asterisk of sorts, the excitement of a young player doing something historic for the very first time in league history. Now, 3 seasons in, the conversation has shifted from whether she can do this to how often she'll keep doing it, and what she needs to add to her game to make the next one look just as inevitable. That shift, from novelty to expectation, might be the clearest sign yet of how far both Clark and this Fever team have come since that first triple-double against the Liberty back in the summer of 2024. There's still a long stretch of season left, more road trips, more contested calls, more nights where a coach's challenge or a buzzer-beating 3 could swing everything. Indiana still has to navigate a competitive Eastern Conference race, and history says the margins in the WNBA playoff picture can shift quickly from one week to the next. But if Portland was any indication, this version of the Fever is hard to stop. Built on a foundation of speed, depth, and a superstar who keeps finding new gears even after missing time with injury. Stephanie White has a player in Caitlin Clark who keeps finding new ways to make her double take in the locker room after the final horn. And if the pattern of her last 4 triple-doubles is any guide, this almost certainly won't be the last time it happens this season. The bigger question now isn't whether Clark can keep producing nights like this one, it's how far this Fever team can ride that production once the games start to matter even more than they already do. There's a strange detail buried in what happened in Portland on Friday night. Something almost nobody noticed in real time, not even the woman running the show from the sideline. Stephanie White didn't realize Caitlin Clark had just put up a triple-double until the team was already back in the locker room. Think about that for a second. One of the most complete performances of the season, happening right in front of the head coach, and it slipped past her until the numbers were already locked in. That's how fast, how chaotic, and how good this Indiana Fever team has become. And by the time White figured out what she'd just watched, she had plenty to say about it. The final score tells part of the story. Indiana beat Portland 112-98 on the road at the Moda Center. And that win wasn't just another mark in the standings. It was the 5th straight game the Fever had cracked the 100-point mark, and their 13th 100-point game of the entire season, a new NBA record that no team had ever touched before this year. 5 games in a row, over 100 points, on the road and at home, against different defenses trying different looks. That kind of consistency doesn't happen by accident, and it's part of why this particular win felt bigger than a single box score. At the center of it was Clark, who finished with 26 points, 10 rebounds and 10 assists in 34 minutes, shooting 5 for 9 from the field and going a near-perfect 14 for 17 at the free throw line. That's her 4th career triple-double, and it puts